Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Finally, I get to do that. What?
Can I ask you a question?
Can you ask me a question?
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think of imagine, just paint yourself this picture, okay?
I love it when you ask me to paint things.
Imagine you're an executive at United Artists.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your poster designer comes in with a new poster design for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the tagline they put on there is
I know where you're going. I do.
I don't know. There's two options here.
Okay.
First, a fistful of dollars. Then, for a few dollars more. This time, the jackpot's a cool $200,000. 5 of the West's fastest guns say, "Come and get it." What would you say to that person?
I would say just again. Do it again. Because that's not right.
How many guns are there in this? Is it 5? Is
They can't
it
count.
5 man?
But did you see
standoff?
Did you see the one that was all about the last two were just practice?
Well, that's that. You know,
Yeah.
For 3 men, war wasn't hell.
Yeah.
It was practice.
It was practice.
It's like, and then they just said, "Oh, just print them all."
Yeah.
What the heck?
That's awesome. I take it you've been working through the Pinterest gallery. Is that what you're doing?
I've been Pinteresting. Can I use that as a verb now? Pinteresting?
Pinteresting? I don't know. I think I'm not sure the gerundic statute of limitations has passed on that.
Well, if they'll put literally in their dictionary.
Then you sure can do that.
That's right.
Oh, man.
I'm going to write to them.
How's your week? You see anything good?
I did not. It was a week of this, Epic, and Game of Thrones, and prepping for class. So.
Oh, yeah, you start teaching again. See, I'm about to go on break. I just finished summer session. Yeah, I get a few weeks off. That's nice.
I had a few months off from my summer session. That was really nice.
Now you're showing off.
That's right.
So, yeah, I didn't see anything either, though. I mean, insofar as I was about to try and show off a little bit, I couldn't. Mostly because this movie's like 7 hours long, so I had to watch it over 7 days.
But that sounds like biblically epic.
I was going to say, and I didn't even get a day off.
Wah, wah.
See what I did there?
That was
dropped
genius.
a Morricone on you.
Oh.
You've been Morriconed. Let's see. So your kids have already been in school for like a month now, right?
Yeah, I think 3 weeks. Yeah.
So ours start next week.
God, man, really?
Yeah. So we're ready for that. We're so ready for that.
I bet.
Yeah. So then I'll be able to start doing my secret movie nooners again.
Yeah.
I have this whole summer off where I haven't been able to do movie nooners. I have a great job.
That sounds like it.
Shall we tell the people where we're from?
Yeah, where are we from?
Hey everybody, it's The Next Reel. My name is Pete Wright. That there is Andy Nelson.
Hey!
And we spoil movies. Thank you once again for putting your movie spoilage needs in our careful hands. Tonight we are going to be wrapping up our no-name trilogy with 1966, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The Man with the Poncho returns. But first, you should find out more about the show. You head over to thenextreel.com. You can learn all about the show. You can see all of our past episodes. Join this conversation on facebook.com/thenextreel, twitter.com/thenextreel, even Google Plus if you can find us over there. We're there. We're posting over there. And now, catching us up on the Instagram, hashtag Guess the Movie, hashtag Pony Prize Challenge, Andy versus the People. You had kind of a week.
I don't want to talk about it.
Let me just step back. We have a special niche audience. People who are able and willing to listen to us talk about one movie for more than an hour each week. That's a very dedicated kind of movie audience. And that movie audience, I think you forgot who they were when you picked this movie. Is that fair?
I know that Donnie Darko has intense fans. I do know that. And I was really trying to pick really obscure images. I mean, I thought I had a hard time on 16 Candles, but Donnie Darko, it's just like, okay, well, here's 2 ladies walking down the street. It's a quick shot in the movie. No one's going to know, but man, was I wrong. I don't know if it's JB or J by 86. Nailed it right out of the gate. First image And yeah, that kind of killed the rest of the week. So, but congratulations to JB86, who is entered to win our Pony Prize for skunking me hardcore this week on the Guess the Movie Pony Prize Challenge.
Introducing a week-long sucking sound into our Instagram channel.
Yes.
That was awesome. Just awesome. Well, I look forward to this week because I have a feeling you've probably been stewing for a whole 7 days.
It's going to be something from 1919. Just wait.
Oh my gosh! It's really just a bunch of pictures of the piano player playing music for the silent film, and we're not going to show you anything from the film itself. Try me now, movie nerds.
Take that.
I love it. That's awesome. I think from there you should redeem yourself by doing a trailer for an awesome film.
My trailer this week is for, leading into the I don't know if we'd call it a series, but the movie we're going to be talking about next week, Jason Reitman's movie. We're having a little holiday break with Labor Day. And, his new film is coming out later in October, and it's called Men, Women, and Children. The trailer came out, and it looks really good. It looks like a very interesting exploration of a group of, interconnected stories of people who and their world of modern communication through texts and emails and IMs, and just the way that people communicate and don't communicate. And it looks really interesting. The cast looks really exciting. The fact that Diablo Cody is not involved excites me quite a bit. The thing that makes me nervous is that Adam Sandler is in it, and notoriously I'm not a fan of his. Even when he tries to do the straight roles, I'm generally not a fan of his. I think the only times that there have been a few times I've liked him. A couple of the Drew Barrymore movies, but that may be all. May be all.
I think I may like him more than you.
Yeah, you may. And I'm not going to judge the movie on the fact that Adam Sandler's in it. I'm going to judge it on that it's a Jason Reitman film, and it looks like something that is very intriguing, that looks like it could be a really powerful film. So I am quite excited for it, and yeah.
I think it looks interesting. I'm really torn on it because I'm excited about it because it looks very interesting, and I love the idea of taking sort of interpreting interface on screen, and I think it's really Sherlock, I think, that's been credited with doing texts on screen, the BBC Sherlock, and it was a really novel convention, actually, putting text messages on screen, and that has since been sort of taken by House of Cards. They do it like David Fincher started doing that in season 1 of House of Cards, and this movie now you get full blown like interface, like here dragging Finder windows around, like they kind of go all the way, such that the technology itself, the interface, the user interface, becomes very much a character on screen, and I'm really interested to see how they do that. The downside of the film is it just you sort of get this vibe that it's another movie that's demonizing technology that's behind a cultural shift, and I worry that people are going to watch it, and of course it's going to come out with all the pundits are going to come out saying, see what's happening, look, this movie is just reflecting what's happening, and everything's terrible, and people don't talk anymore, and so suicide and terrible darkness. So, I don't know. That just bad, and that just feels like I'm ready to be entertained, and I hope we can keep it at that.
Well, it has that look of the balance between, how do you communicate? And I think that's, I don't think it necessarily needs to be a story about communication to be telling a story about people dealing with communication problems, and I'm hoping that it does find that balance where it's just about people not being able to communicate, and it's not focusing on the technology, even though, like you said, it very blatantly is emphasizing the technology in the way that it is designed. And I find that also very intriguing because it is based on a novel. And so it's like, how did that work in the novel?
Well, to be fair, the novel was a pop-up book, so... No. It really, it's like, it's practically American Beauty with text messages, it really has that same sort of vibe to it. And so I'm really interested, like you said, but I think that's the right perspective, but boy, this trailer is tech dominant. It's hard to take that any other way.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I think that was the focus of the trailer. I mean,
Sure.
there's no speaking in it. It's just that beautiful rendition of whatever that song is, and then the all the images of the texting and the words on the screen.
Right. When does when does it hit?
October 17th, looks like.
Very nice. Men, women, and children. Jason Reitman. All right. Mine is, I don't know what to make of this film, but I feel like I've been following it for the better part of a year. Fans of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart will remember when he took off and left for 3 months to go to the Middle East and film and shoot his first movie as director. And that film is the trailer is finally out for that film. It's called Rosewater, directed by Jon Stewart, written by Jon Stewart, based on the book by Maziar Bahari. Stars Gael Garcia Bernal, Soresh Adashlu. Okay, and other people I can't pronounce, but very talented people. The story is a true story based on Bahari's experiences. He was a Canadian journalist, a journalist with Canadian citizenship, I should say, working for Newsweek covering the elections, and because he raised his camera during a protest, he was arrested, and so it's his story of imprisonment in Iran. It looks good. It really, it looks good, but I can't help getting this feeling that it might just be a little bit too feel good. Is that right?
Well, it does feel that way a little bit. It's hard to say, but I know what you're going for. It does seem like it's that sort of, overcoming adversity sort of that kind of theme.
Right. That's what I'm a little bit nervous about. Like, I want it to be I want to see the adversity. I don't necessarily want to see the end of Breakfast Club.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm very, very curious to see it, and I think it looks. I love that Stewart did this. I really do, and as a result, I'm absolutely going to be in on it right at the beginning. It comes out November 7th, 2014.
Coming from Jon Stewart, you think that he would perhaps avoid that type of storytelling and just really kind of go for the more gritty story. But then again, it is a biopic, so maybe he really does. Maybe it does end like the end of Breakfast Club.
Fist in the air and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. So anyway, November, on the lookout for Rosewater. Trailers on the website, thenextreel.com. And I think that's it now.
Now we better watch out for those 5 guys.
Okay. Yeah, let's watch out for them. All of them. 2 guys we've never even seen.
That's right.
They're hiding in the tumbleweeds.
The good. The bad. The ugly. The blue. The gray. The Civil War. The good. The bad. The ugly. The questions. The answers. The showdown. The reason. The goal.
Andy, this is a big one, right? This is the big one. The iconic. Wah, wah, wah. I've been waiting for this one the whole time. I feel like I've been like every Morricone riff, I want to do that. But I have been consciously holding myself back.
Yeah, it really is like the Western theme to end all Western themes.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
And in a way, it's kind of like the main theme that Morricone wrote that may be better known than any of his other themes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but it feels that way because it is this is like one of those themes that has gone far and beyond the actual place of the film that it was made in, and it's just kind of become a theme that is integrated into people's subconscious, much like the violin stabbings in Psycho. That reet.
Yeah, but what's funny about this one? It is so transcended the film that it is now representative of the West, right? it is the theme of the Western. Whereas when you hear the violin stabbing, you think of Crazy Psycho, right? I mean, I think
but I think it also has transcended, because I think you could also, like, in any sort of anybody stabbing somebody, like in any film, you can kind of picture that sound. It is that kind of Crazy Psycho horror sound.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is, I think there are more people who hear the Morricone thing and don't know it's from this movie or any movie than people who hear the violin stabbing.
That's entirely possible.
That's my pitch. I'm going to hang it up.
Hey, I think it sounds like a good one.
Mm-hmm. This one is a much longer film,
especially the director's cut.
Yeah. So let's see. They come in. Do you have it handy? The links. This one. How long was the one you watched?
I watched the one that is, I think, the only version that has been released since they created the extended cut back
just under
in
3 hours, right?
The mid 90s, right? It was I think it's like 2 hours and 57 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, that's me too. And so it is. Well, I'm going to let you start. I feel like I started the last couple, but I feel like it is yet again an appreciable maturing on the part of Leone and team.
It's a brilliant film. I think this may be my favorite of his films. I don't know if it's his best film. I don't know. Maybe it is his best film. I think that this is such a fun film to watch. I think he definitely continues maturing as a filmmaker as he progresses, continuing to make Once Upon a Time in the West, A Fistful of Dynamite, and Once Upon a Time in America. He continues progressing and maturing, but here there's just so much fun going on in this film. And the later films don't seem to have quite as much fun. They seem to be taking things a little more seriously. And this one, just the characters are so rich, and just the introductions alone. I mean, look at the opening half hour of the film, where we get to meet first the ugly, and then the bad, and then the good, and we get to kind of just meet these wild characters. He has a way of creating these indelible characters that just, it's almost. I mean, like we've talked about it before, they're not necessarily defined by the names or the titular names, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the good certainly is not always good. The ugly, I mean, he's really is kind of the most lovable one in the film. And the bad, I mean, okay, I will say that he definitely is pretty bad, but he also has his moments where he, kind of shows some heart. And so it's interesting the way that Leone's always playing with that, but still, he just creates these characters, these iconic personas that have kind of taken over the idea of what you can do in a Western. And as he has done in all three of these films, he's just continued to use his love for the Westerns that he used to watch, and he's kind of created his own kind of wild and crazy rock and roll version of the Western, and that in so many ways ended up influencing so many of the Westerns and just so many other films that were to come after that. And I think Leone, aside from that, also developed this amazing cinematic style, and he really, really fine-tuned it here, watching the way that he composed his shots. The opening shot is just a perfect example, where you go from this gorgeous wide vista of the southwestern countryside shot in Spain, and then all of a sudden this extreme close-up of a figure like moves right into the frame, kind of like pops up from the side, and all of a sudden you go from this extreme wide shot to this extreme close-up. And I think that's like a perfect way to kind of define the way that Leone would direct his films. He just loved the back and the forth of this wide expanse and these extreme close-ups, and he just explored that way, creating this new cinematic language that was big. I mean, it was a very big style, and it said a lot, and it paired with the actors that he brought in and the look that he created and the music. I mean, he really did kind of redefine what it was to be a Western, and gave filmmakers a lot of exciting new ways to put a film together.
I totally agree. back to your first comment, whether or not this was his greatest film. I may be in the minority. I do love this film. I really do, and I had a great time watching it again. I don't like it as much as For a Few Dollars More. And so in terms of the three of them, this one doesn't hold up to the kind of emotional connection that I had with the characters in the first or in the second film, and that really surprised me, given the attention that this film gets in critical circles. So that's the first point. Now, I also think that you do see Leone having a great deal more fun with the camera in the film. Not just this, he loves to play with these sort of visual angles. There's a lot more sort of handheld work in this film. You feel like he's taking more risks with where he puts the camera, not just on the ground, but really these wonderful handheld tracking shots. And it just felt like I was much more involved, like a part of the conversation with Good, Bad, or Ugly, as we made it through their journey across the Italian Spanish West.
Right.
So I had a great time with that. I also love his sense of visual symmetry. Right. Much has bbeen said about the standoff at the end, the trio at the end of the film, which I'm sure we'll talk at some length about later. But you mentioned that initial sequence in the opening of the film, and I find that a wonderful bookend to the end sequence as well. So the film opens, we're on this tight shot of this character who interrupts the frame, and then we are introduced again, or first, to Leone's use of the camera in setting the stage around this around this building. But he doesn't coddle to us, right? As the viewer, he doesn't attempt to give us so much that he's walking us through the sequence. So you don't know, as he is cutting back and forth between these riders into the scene that come in at a distance, and the guy that we met who jumped into the frame. We don't know at first that they are, that they're all on the same team, and they're casing this this bar looking for the ugly. And so that's our introduction to the ugly, but it's also our introduction to Leone's wonderful, use of camera, and I think really gets us ready for some of the visual tricks to come. I deeply enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and also his the length of his shots. That's something else we get. Like after we see that guy, we cut to the wide shot of the town, and we're on the shot for like 12 seconds as we watch a dog just kind of walk across the frame.
Right. Very true. And one of the things that you brought back into our sphere of awareness was this the Max Tolin art of editing in The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. We'll put a link to this video. It's about a 14-minute video in the show notes, and he dissects this final sequence at mathematical detail. And I've been thinking a lot about that, because this whole sense of threes is, it at least appears to be, incredibly important to Leone. I mean, when you look at all of his shots, they're in sort of, they're in some sort of factor of three. The longer shots are 12 seconds or 9 seconds, or the shorter shots are 3 seconds. And then when you get down into the standoff at the end, you get these 1 second little clips and quips jumping back and forth between these characters. But to really give us a sense of place of these characters, none of which who really, like each other. He does just a wonderful job of using the math of time to bring us into the emotional connection with these characters.
Yeah, and I don't think we've talked about the editing that much in his films, but there is a lot of smart editing in the way that he does construct the stories that really ties in very directly with all of the camera work that he does, like just the amazing shots, knowing how to time all of that out. And yes, his films, as you watch them, kind of progressively get longer and longer, at least in this trilogy. I mean, we definitely have gotten to the point where we've just watched the longest one of the trilogy. But he's also, it's one of those things. He's allowing time for things to happen. And yes, it could be argued that a lot of that could be cut out and thinned out. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't find it boring. I find it just, as somebody who's kind of welcoming us into this world that he has created and these characters, he's letting us enjoy the details and enjoy those moments. And when we do have a 2.5 minute standoff of just looking at people's faces and their itchy trigger fingers, we're really exploring the psychology of these people as what they are trying to do, and that's what is interesting about how he uses that editing and the math of figuring out which shot to use when and how long each shot should be to explore what these characters are thinking and why are they thinking it and what is going to happen in this standoff, who's going to shoot what or who's going to shoot which person and who's going to draw first. And it's an amazing way to kind of explore that and build this amazing sequence that is, I think it's one of the great edited sequences in cinema. It's just so stunning to go back and watch that film. It's like 65 shots or something like that from the first wide shot to the last wide shot. And looking at the way that he constructs that to create a moment that just has this tension that builds and builds all through it to that final climactic moment, and the violence is over in a split second. And I think it stands out as a way to build tension to a moment that doesn't need to last any longer.
It is, and it's interesting. I think we learned so much about the characters that we've spent these last 3 hours with. We learn probably the most that we need to learn about them in this sequence, just in watching their movements, their twitches, their eye movements, and to watch, in particular, Eastwood, knowing in hindsight that he has already essentially rigged the game by essentially disarming one of the opponents. So he gets this sort of one-upsmanship, but we don't know that at the time. He just looks so calm, so collected, so in control, and so powerful that at that point, it's his power at one end of this triangle that, ends up really diffusing the bad, right? And ends up diffusing Lee Van Cleef as Angel Eyes, who is, really... I think at this point we see that he really feels like if there are sides that are going to be drawn, they're going to be drawn against him. Mm-hmm. And the positioning on screen using that full frame, that beautiful wide frame, the positioning these three on screen, I think is a very powerful punctuation to what we learn about their characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's still, though, to me, not the greatest scene in the film. And to me, that would be what happens next.
Okay.
And maybe it's because of just how much I adore Eli Wallach in this film.
It's hard not to love him. I mean, he is such a rascal, and he plays the bandit so perfectly. He is kind of a despicable character, but he's just, you talk about that whole save the cat kind of theory of screenwriting that we've discussed before. And
you refresh us. It's been like 100 episodes since we've talked.
Right. Yeah. The idea is, you can write bad characters into your film, or you can have characters that your audience is following, and they can be bad people. But as long as they do something good, like save a cat early on in the story, there's something that your audience can kind of latch onto. That's the basic philosophy, and you see that in some films. This film, he doesn't really do anything that's out and out good. There's nothing that I would say that stands out as a save the cat moment. But I would say that kind of what is that save the cat moment is just the comedy that is built into his character. And as despicable as he is, he's not a character that you just out and out hate, because he is written in such a fun way. And Eli Wallach performs him with such zest and just this wild zeal that makes him somebody that you do care for, and you do want to see him make it through the end of the film, because he is kind of just like this insanely crazy, fun bad guy that you're rooting for.
He is, and let's step back just a bit. So the relationships, for those who haven't seen the film in a long time, or have never seen the film, essentially this is a chase across the West film. These three characters, the Mexican bandit born in Brooklyn, played by Eli Wallach. Lee Van Cleef is the bad guy. He is this cunning, ruthless, mercenary who's an assassin. And Clint Eastwood plays, the man with no name, called in this film Blondie, also a bounty hunter, who trades on his confidence. And these three men discover by turns of events that there is a case of gold a stash of gold that has been hidden in a grave, and each of them learns different pieces, different clues to where the gold is, and because they don't naturally give up those clues to one another, they end up chasing one another across the West to their ultimate destination. I don't know. I feel like I sort of talked in circles around that. Did I pretty much get it?
Yeah, you pretty much got it.
So the final sequence is the big standoff, and where the clues will be revealed. The particular grave that this is buried in, the stash of gold is buried in, will be revealed, and somebody's going to walk away with it. And after the standoffs, after the violence, we see that our hero Blondie and Eli Wallach, the bandit, end up living, and they go to the gravesite. Now, at this point, Blondie, the good, at gunpoint, tells Tuco, the bandit, Wallach's character, to begin digging. They uncover the gold, and Blondie stands ugly, on top of a cross, a gravestone, and wraps a noose around his neck and ties his hands behind his back. So if the cross, which is not stable, ends up toppling it all, he will fall and hang himself. And then Eastwood's character rides off across the plain. This sequence, to me, it's a long sequence of Tuco screaming Blondie, and he gets louder and louder even as he is suffocating, losing his balance. You can see him just sort of holding his head up with by the weight of the noose, trying not to topple over completely, knowing what will happen, and he keeps screaming Blondie, 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 and it cuts back and forth between a close-up on his face, and again that long shot where all we see, there's no movement in the Blondie Blondie POV, right? There's no movement in that camera. It's just every time we cut back to it, it's the horse riding further into the distance. Mm-hmm. Impossibly far. It's like a joke that goes way too long. Only after we have essentially lost hope that Blondie, it turns out, was not good after all, and that wouldn't necessarily be a surprise given the nature of this film, does he turn around and, with his crack marksmanship, pulls out his rifle, balances on his arm, which is holding the reins to a moving horse. In one shot, he fires at Tuco, cuts the rope, and Tuco falls face first into his half of the money. I was just really, this was a gut-wrenching sequence to watch, and maybe it's because I've seen so many of the sort of so many kind of dissertations on the standoff itself, that this sequence I found much more powerful to me.
Well, and what's interesting about it is they do kind of, Leone and his writers ended up creating this almost like picaresque buddy journey of Tuco and Blondie as they work together, sometimes separately, sometimes together, working to try to get this gold, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a very the journey itself is very important, but as we journey with these two characters, we get to know the two of them, and it does kind of, we do see elements of their stories. In particular, really Tuco's story, kind of we get a little of his backstory when he goes to visit his brother. And then we there's that great moment as Blondie kind of spies on them and gets a sense of where Tuco's coming from. And I think the way that kind of builds into the relationship, obviously there was a lot of mistrust in the relationship, especially at the beginning when Blondie essentially, they've kind of created this precarious partnership as they rob from these towns, basically by, turning in Tuco, who's a wanted man. And then Blondie frees him by shooting the noose, and after he's collected the reward, and then they split the reward. It's a great little kind of thing that they've kind of created. However, it doesn't go well because Blondie decides it's not working for him, so he dumps Tuco in the middle of the desert, and then Tuco manages to survive, and then he does the same thing to Blondie, and just as he's about to kill Blondie, that kind of leads them to the clues that put them on this big journey of theirs. So clearly they have a very kind of rougher relationship in the beginning, but after that moment, when Blondie kind of gets tapped into a little bit of Tuco's backstory, I think there is a little bit of change, and it seems like they are working a little bit more together, and there is kind of this buddy relationship, even though Tuco, if there is somebody who ends up being more trustworthy, it ends up being Tuco rather than Blondie. Tuco is the one who actually tells Blondie the truth when they're sharing their information with each other as they're strapping the dynamite to the bridge. Blondie lies to Tuco. So it's this very interesting relationship between the two of them. But even at the ending, you get the sense that, okay, Blondie just never is going to quite trust Tuco again. But he's not going to kill him. He's going to at least put him in a situation where he can create a little distance between the two of them, so that, okay, yes, it was very awful that he did that to Tuco, his quote unquote partner in this whole quest to get the money, but he did free him, and now he's separated enough distance between the two of them so that he can go off on his own and leave Tuco to his own way of getting out. It's a very interesting relationship, but you're right, it does create that tension because you don't know what Blondie is really going to do, because he's proven himself to not necessarily be good and not necessarily be trustworthy. But it is a great way that it ends, because you realize, okay, he's not going to be the bad. He's not going to be the guy who just lets Tuco die standing there on that cross out there in this cemetery. He actually is going to help him. So it is a great moment, and the way that Leone builds that relationship over the course of the film leads you to really like both of them and like the relationship, but still be unsure as to where it's going to go, which you don't often see in buddy films.
That's right. And I think what's so interesting about it to me is that, when we look at the actual sort of representation of the namesakes, right, the symbolism of good, bad, and ugly, good and bad tend to live up to to the judgment that we ascribe to their names. Right, one is very clearly bad. He is bad from the moment we see him. He is an assassin and a traitor to to his own integrity. Right.
Yeah.
And the one that we don't get any sort of character judgment is ugly. Like, we don't ascribe any character judgment to ugly, because we're not told if he's good or bad. We're only told that he's ugly. And
right.
They make him, they go back and forth between making him just sort of like normal looking guy to looking really not great. But we're left to wonder, when pushed, which direction will he go? And because he never really goes in a straight line, it makes him the most interesting character, I think, to watch, because we're left to guess at every turn, what is he going to do? And that leads to the march across the desert. I was really surprised by the march across the desert when he marches Blondie across the desert and makes Blondie super ugly, marching him across the blazing hot desert. They get about 30 miles in, and and Eastwood is just, his skin is like melting off of his face. I was surprised in this film that ugly did that. Right, because even though he had been already marched himself, told to survive in the desert, on his own by Blondie, I didn't expect him to exact retribution in that exact way. Because again, I was able to withhold judgment because I wasn't told what he was, good or bad, and so it was a nice surprise to watch him, exact vengeance in that way and take power back, because by nature of his name, he is put in a position of weakness.
Yeah.
Right. And to watch him take his power back in this way is an interesting and kind of empowering turn from an audience member's perspective, who, we all, I think, naturally take sides,
Right.
So I found him really a terrifically interesting character to watch, just when you look at the symbolism of their own names.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to say, really, when you're watching the film, who really you're rooting for. Are you rooting for him more, or are you rooting for Clint Eastwood more? Because, Tuco is kind of a more indelible character that you enjoy so much more.
Well, I went to high school with both those guys, and I definitely would have been hanging out with Tuco. Just saying.
Yes.
So Blondie, played by Clint Eastwood in this film, this was, at the time he was offered the position for this film, neither of the two prior films had been released in the U.S.
Right.
And Leone talked him into it and gave him a Ferrari.
Yeah, I don't think that. I think he was really enjoying being in these films, but he was. He also was kind of he had seen the Italian way of making movies, and I don't think he completely trusted it. And he definitely talked to Eli and Lee about what to expect when making these films and how you really have to keep your eye on things, because they were a lot more slipshod than any U.S. production that he'd been involved in up to that point. And even on the set here, I mean, Eli Wallach says there was at least 3 times where he was potentially nearly killed because they just weren't being very responsible filmmakers, And I mean, we laugh about it now. It's definitely sad to think about in light of recent events here in the U.S. of indie filmmakers who were being irresponsible and ended up causing the death of a crew member. Mm-hmm. It is a crazy business where people make these big decisions, and the director, like one example, he really wanted to get that amazing shot of the train going by as Tuco is laying next to it, and he's handcuffed to the dead guard who is on the other side of the tracks, and Tuco is using the train as a way to kind of cut the chains, and Leone wanted to get the shot of Eli lying right there in the dirt next to the train to show people that it was really him, but little did they know that this train had this little step on one of its cars, and had Eli just slightly lifted his head up, it would have smacked him, possibly killed him. So luckily, that didn't happen, but it could have, because they weren't paying attention.
Well, and it looks terrifying. It just looks.
Oh, it does.
You can feel that he's not acting.
Yeah, right. No kidding. It just is. It's uncomfortable to watch that, 'cause knowing that it's a real person, that Eli is sitting there while this train zips by inches away from him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was so Eastwood. He did say yes to the film, and he did make this final film in the trilogy, with again Lee Van Cleef taking up a new role after his portrayal of essentially the romantic lead in For a Few Dollars More.
Yeah, and I think it's great seeing Lee Van Cleef in such a different role. I mean, Clint Eastwood's character, the man with no name, has really been very much the same character all through the 3 films. And it's very interesting the way that his character is portrayed here. He doesn't start off looking the same as he did in the previous 2 films, but as you get toward the end of the film, he ends up getting his poncho and the new hat and everything. So it's almost like this film, his character is almost like a lead-in to those other 2 films, kind of creating this kind of circular story that Leone did.
Which totally works, right? I mean, it totally plays into his sort of sense of natural symmetry, and really does work. And it's why our Amazon comment from I think 2 weeks ago was somebody who saw the movie and then said she wanted to see The Good, the Bad, the Ugly as the first film, and I can totally see somebody making that mistake.
Yeah, right, because it does kind of feel like, oh, well, then he's been wearing a poncho,
right.
The poncho that he got in the next 2 films.
Right.
So it's easy to see how somebody could make that mistake. But, I mean, he really is essentially the same character in all 3 films, hence the reason that United Artists was able to market it that way. Lee Van Cleef, though, I think really does a great job of changing it up quite a bit and going from somebody who is... he's a bounty hunter in For a Few Dollars More, but there's a reason, and he's got this pursuit of this person who did him wrong, and you definitely feel more for him in that film. This film, he is just downright bad. I mean, he definitely goes the John Maria Volante route in this film. He's maybe not as crazy as Jean is, but he is just as evil, I would say.
Yeah, Jean Maria Volante brought a sense of just sociopathy to the role that Lee Van Cleef is more calculating. You don't feel like he's as kind of wildly unpredictable as Volante was in his first 2 roles. But, it's interesting you bring him up that, it was originally Volante that Leone was considering for the role of Tuco. In this film, which would have been bizarre.
It would have been bizarre. I don't know if I could. I don't know. Having seen Eli in this role for as many years as I have now, I just have a hard time picturing anyone else do it. And I know John can go that kind of crazy route. I mean, he definitely portrayed crazy a little bit in the last film, but I don't think it would go the same route. And, you get used to one role. If we had only known the Jean-Marie Volante as Tuco story, then, that would have been a different film and we would be talking about it. But I don't know. I really like that he went with Eli Wallach. I think he's a
Yeah.
perfectly cast as the ugly.
I wonder how much of Eli Wallach's performance grade I'm giving him in my own head is it really depends or hinges on the fact that he is, such a New Yorker playing a Mexican bandit. Right. I mean, it's just the way he goes in and out of the accent, and it's just, I mean, part of his oafishness is in that weird sort of cultural concoction that Tuco becomes. I love it. I do love it, but I wonder if I give him too much.
Well, yeah, and to that point, I mean, this is one of those films that I don't know if I have too many problems with the nationalities or the looks of anybody in it, because I mean, he is using people from a wide swath of cultural backgrounds to portray people living in the Southwest, really,
Right.
whether they're soldiers or just kind of the cowboy characters, and oftentimes you look at some of these people and you go, well, he's clearly probably not somebody who I would normally see in a Union military outfit, but okay, I'll buy it because it's a Leone Western, and it kind of creates this mishmash, fantastical version of the history. And so the fact that Eli Wallach is playing this Mexican bandit, I don't have too many problems with it, because I mean, he works so well in the role.
Exactly, and that's why I almost hasten to bring it up, but it is there. It is out there. So
Right.
many of the other the other characters, they just sort of they fit the cultural model, and he is one that stands out. And I think the comedy comes from how well he stands out. I think that's ultimately the point.
Yes.
So, all right. So those are the big three. Who else stands out to you in this film as somebody worth that you want to talk about?
Well, cast-wise, I mean, there are definitely faces that we've seen. Mario Brega, Luigi Pistilli are some of the faces that we've seen in some of the last films. But cast-wise, I think that this is one of those stories that, because of the picaresque nature of the story, it is very, okay, we get a little bit of this character and then we get a little bit of this character, because it's a journey story. We're not getting the same character running through the film other than these three characters. And so, yes, we get a scene with Father Pablo Ramirez as Tuco's brother, played by Luigi Pistilli, which is a great scene. But, it's a 5-minute scene, and then we're out, and we don't come back there because they don't come back there. They're on their journey across New Mexico and into Texas. Right. And so, to that point, I don't think any of the other performers, I think they're great and they do well in their roles, but none of them stand out more than any of the others for me.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. That was my feeling, right? That so many of these other characters are so transient. We don't get any characters like, oh my goodness, who was he? He was the guy in the train whose bed was next to the train tracks. What was his name?
Piero Piero? Or
yeah.
He was Piero Piero in Fistful of Dollars.
In Fistful of Dollars, yeah. But
right.
we don't have any of those performances that stand out so much, even though they are small. And I think because they are such transient characters in the film, and the film is so long, like over the sort of scope of the film. I do think the drunk captain.
Yeah.
Was that Captain Clinton? Is that right? Captain Clinton, Aldo Giffre. The whole I really like the way, and maybe this is interesting, right? I really like the way they portray the Civil War from this sort of European perspective. That it was nonsense. Everybody was drunk. It was horribly frustrating and extremely repetitive, and it was only by the grace of these thugs coming along who were willing to actually blow up the bridge that they had any sort of respite from the blood and battle of the Civil War.
Yeah,
there was something about that exchange that I found both comical and humanizing at the same time. We've seen so much of the Civil War. We've seen so much, so many from whether it's from Ken Burns and his fantastic work researching the Civil War to, Glory to, other, really interesting angles on the Civil War that are super dramatic. This one, I really found myself interested in the way they portrayed Captain Clinton, the drunk, as he's saying, all we do, the only thing that we have in common with the other side is we are soaked in alcohol. That's the only way we can get through. Who can get drunk enough that we can let go of the horror that we just have to tell these young men to go get themselves killed. And I thought that was a really nice kind of middle of the film punctuation. So that made me happy.
And that's something that, speaking earlier of Leone and his maturation as a filmmaker, that's definitely something that you do see in this film that I've talked about in the last couple, how, he's kind of, mocking religion a little bit. This one, I think he actually is the first time he's really maybe trying to say something. And I feel like there definitely is more of him looking at the kind of the awfulness of war and that these are just these horrible situations that happen that just kill so many people. And, especially at a time, shortly after World War II, when, you can tell these stories about just like the insanity of it and how crazy war is. And that scene in particular reminds me of Apocalypse Now, when there's the bridge scene where they're crossing this bridge and like all these people are fighting, these soldiers are fighting, but they don't know who the captain is. They don't even know if the captain's alive. And they're just kind of doing it because they're just like, well, this is what we do. And it's this very surreal moment when, I can't remember the Martin Sheen's character's name is crossing over this bridge trying to find somebody to take a message for him or whatever. And it's just like this surreal craziness of what war does to people. And that film is all about that. And I think this film, Leone is reaching beyond just telling this really fun story, which he does really well, but he is actually imbuing it with this element of what war does to people. And yes, we've got these three crazy characters as they cross this landscape, but as they cross this landscape, we're getting these bits and moments that are very touching.
The thing I think that's so special about the Civil War in particular is it's the first film in the trilogy. It's the only film in the trilogy that gives you a very clear sense of historical context. Right. The other films that we have are, thugs, gang versus gang, set in a small space of kind of the West. This film it's epic in scope and what it touches across history. That we are here, we're in the United States, and we are dealing with this period of time that was particularly impactful. And the fact that these guys keep trying to put on the uniforms of the opposite or of the of one of the armies so that they can blend in and be able to make it across the country without being captured, but keep screwing it up. He's both part of the comedy of the film, but also part of the sort of the reality of the period that I think Leone is trying to inject into the film. I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So in terms of the the crew, Leone and story and screenplay, Leone and crew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his screenplay, I mean, Luciano Vincenzoni, one of the guys who helped him with the last one, helped him write this one, and I guess kind of came up with the idea and pitched it to United Artists when they were first coming over to talk about taking these films over to the U.S. as kind of all three of them. And, Luciano had this idea of just these three guys pursuing some gold. And that was really all he had. And United Artists liked it. And
I have the idea for the poster already.
That's right. That's probably why it says five guys. They wrote the poster before they even had a script. But yeah, so he was somebody who worked with Leone on this and, helped develop this great script. And he then they had a few other people involved as well, Agenori Incroci and Furio Scarpelli. And then somebody that we haven't mentioned is Mickey Knox, who is a very important part of the writing team for all of these films, because he is the one who actually took the Italian script and figured out, okay, with all these different people speaking these different languages, I'm going to have to rewrite it based on kind of their lip movement. And I didn't realize how complicated this was, because it's not just a straight up translation that Mickey Knox did. He actually would try to look at what they said in whatever language they happen to be saying it, and try to translate that line into something that also kind of fit the lip movements. And that, Mickey, I listened to something where he was talking about like this moment where the guard who is making these prisoners play, this band of prisoners, while Angel Eyes is having his guy torture Tuco. The guard says, what does he say in the film? Now I'm blanking. He says, play. More feeling is what he says, and but in the Italian he doesn't say that. He says something else like louder or something like that. But the way that his lips move, it didn't translate right, and because he's got too many lip movements going on for what he did. So Mickey Knox actually had to try to find the right way to do all this, and so it's interesting. I didn't realize that, but a lot of the credit for some of the great translations and the way that the story is told in English need to be credited to Mickey Knox.
I had not, I didn't know anything of Mickey Knox. I'd obviously seen films that he's been involved in, but apparently Quentin Tarantino's love for Good, the Bad, and the Ugly goes deep into Mickey Knox territory. He named Woody Harrelson's character Mickey Knox in Natural Born Killers.
There you
Mickey
go.
Knox, there you go. A little bit of trivia. Didn't know
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
And he's somebody who, he's passed away just last year.
Yeah, very recently.
But he was still acting in the all the way through the 90s, and so he'd been in Godfather Part 3. He's just one of those people that had been around and still involved in a lot of projects. So it's definitely somebody to mention. Another somebody to mention is that Tonino Delicoli, a new cinematographer for Leone, he switched it up, and I believe that Tonino ended up being his cinematographer for the rest of his films after this. He kind of stuck with Leone through the rest of it, and I really, I think the look works. It works really well. We've talked a bit about the camera work already, but just something about the look of this. I think speaking specifically, to one sequence, the desert sequence, that desert, there's something about the look of that desert that just has this dry. It's a desert. Of course, it's going to look dry and barren, but just the lighting of it and the way that they shot it emphasizes that to a way that I think really works very well in the film. And Leone he was a fan of painters and a lot of surrealist painters that he really liked, and actually kind of inspired the look of that sequence and of the whole film. But I think that it's I can't get out of my head any of the shots where you see Eastwood crawling across the desert, and then you see Eli coming up behind him on his horse with that pink parasol over his head.
Exactly.
And it's genius the way that it was written and the way it was performed, but just the look of that also, it does have this very painterly look to it that I think is really powerful.
Oh, it absolutely is. And it's interesting. How much credit do you think he gets versus Leone for this idea of kind of the locked frame perspective? The first time we talked about this, I think, was in Spielberg, right? It was in the Indiana Jones series.
Right. It was the whole Dehors de la Seine, right?
Yeah, right. The world that is in that we see is all we get to know, and so that's why the characters can be so wildly surprised when people who are just out of frame come into frame. They should have seen them all along, but oh my goodness, we get to be surprised,
right.
And that happens all the time. In particularly this film, I don't actually remember as much of it happening in the first two, but this film it lends to that sense of visual comedy that we have the frame. Suddenly, oh my gosh, there are bandits that are all right around us. Why didn't we see them 1 foot ago? It's worth a laugh, but if you're not kind of in the spirit, it could look really dumb.
Right, exactly, and it is very funny. That's something that I definitely noticed rewatching this film, is how often that happened in this one. And I don't know. It's interesting. Does that come from the writers and the director, or is that something that kind of the DP worked out with him? It seems like it's a story thing, but clearly it was designed in the shooting of it.
Yeah, that's my that was my sense. I don't know, but it's interesting to see, just to see it used quite so fervently in this film. So
right.
Anyhow, he also did Name of the Rose, Jean-Jacques Arnaud. Remember that one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, that's a guy who really celebrates the burning of books. He makes a burning library look really good.
Oh, that's funny.
Who else? Who else is on your mind?
We talked about the editing of this film, and we haven't really talked about the editing or the editors before, but the two editors, Eugenio Alabiso and Nino Baragli, I don't know if I'm saying those completely correct, but I'm aiming for it. I think that together they do an amazing job of cutting this film together. It's a long film, and there's a lot of important edits that really are key for the telling of the story. And I'm not going to go into it too much because we already talked at length about the editing of that climactic, trio, gunfight. But I think a lot of the credit goes to them for finding the right way to pace the editing within that sequence and the entire film to make it work so well.
Absolutely agree. And like you, I don't want to belabor that point, but you're right that so much of that credit goes to these guys. And when you look at their credits, particularly this Nino Barali is 200 films working with everybody from obviously Leone to Fellini to Roberto Benigni in his last film. It's quite a catalog.
It is, definitely is.
Mm-hmm.
Carlo Simi is back doing the production design, and also on this one takes up the mantle for the costume design. And those two go hand in hand so much in creating the overall look of this world. And Carlo Simi has been working with Leone on all of these films, and he I think is as much a part of creating this Western world that as Leone is. I mean, so much of just like the iconic things going on, the poncho that Clint Eastwood wears, just the way that Tuco has his gun on a string around his neck that he kind of tucks into his pocket. There's so much of those things that are kind of run through this film that I think are integral, and just like these ratty old towns that they are all going in and out of. Carlo Simi, I think, is a definitely a key component to this film as well.
Well, and once again, you get this sense of growth and maturity in the look of the film. I mean, this is an order of magnitude larger in scope and scale than For a Few Dollars More, and just as For a Few Dollars More was so much bigger than Fistful of Dollars. And I think that you see it's really delightful to see him rise to the challenge and being able to outfit the North and the South, right? These armies in a way that is authentic in Italy and Spain, and to put them in this, I love that sequence when the Tuco and Blondie are dressed as Confederates, and then the Northern Army rides down, but they look like the Gray because they're covered in dust,
right.
And that's just such a wonderful reveal. I think it's just in terms of that, the production design. I think it's a really, really nice touch. I think it's a great title for him.
Yeah. Yeah, and to that point, Leone does pull a lot of things along with his team. They pull a lot of things from other films. Like that moment. I can't remember what film was directly referenced, but there was another film where it might be like I want to say it's Buster Keaton's The General, where they're so dirty that he can't tell that it's the other side, and then they dust off, and he sees that it's actually the other guys. It's very clever, but that's something that. He does all through these films, is he's pulling from his favorite Westerns or just all these other famous films to tell the story. And something else that we didn't mention is that Leone is very fascinated by the truth of the Civil War and the true story. And even though it's this story of these three guys trying to find this gold, he really did try to set it in a realistic Civil War setting that happened in the Southwest. And a lot of people go, the Civil War was all kind of in the eastern half of the country. It never was really in the West. Well, there actually was a battle. It was Sibley. I don't know if he's a colonel or a general, but Sibley was over in Texas and New Mexico, and actually that was kind of the person that Leone tapped into to kind of have these make all these battles being revolving around Sibley and his troops, which is interesting. It's nice to see that he was trying to kind of create something that was more realistic, even if it is a fictional version of the Civil War.
Right. Again, that gives us that sense of context, both historical and cultural, that makes the film that much more resonant, I think. Even though there are so many elements of the film that are over the top, at least it finds its grounding in those areas.
We haven't really talked about the title sequences in any of these films so much, but they're all just beautiful, beautiful title sequences. They all have kind of a James Bond-esque sort of quality with this kind of this great rock and roll kind of Western score that Ennio Morricone does for each of them. But Eugenio Lardani created the title sequences for the three films, and over at the Art of the Title, they talk about these films, but they actually have a little thing called a Festival of Titles, the Westerns of Eugenio Lardani, where you can watch his titles and kind of explore a little bit more about him and his title work for these films. I think that it is just as integral a part of these films as so many other elements that we've already discussed. That's a link that we can also put in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. We did talk about that last week. We talked about that one, particularly that Art of the Title thing. I'm checking. We didn't actually put it in the notes because that was a good one.
Yeah.
Fistful of Titles. Yeah, I'll put that in right now. There you go. Check that out.
Internet Movie Firearm Database. I don't even know if I'm going to read through all of these. I mean, we do have
so many.
We do have Tuco going into a gun shop. And the list is, I mean, they list at least 21 different weapons that are used in this film. Everything from, the Colt 1851 Navy that we've seen Eastwood using in all the films, to the Gatling gun, to the different cannons and howitzers, to the Victor Collette pepper box, all these different wild weapons that are seen throughout the film. It's a fantastic list of weapons and a lot of fun guns. I think if I had to go through all of them, you don't ever see it used, but my favorite one that you see in the film, and really it's just because it looks so stinking cool, it's the one of the guns that Tuco is looking at is the Galland revolver. It's the one that kind of the front piece kind of swings down and it pulls it open. It's a really cool looking gun, but it actually was not invented until 1868. Of course, the film takes place in 1862, so it's anachronistic, but it does look really cool. And again, I'm not a gun guy. I just find these fascinating to look at all these different guns.
That's
so
awesome.
we'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I'm not a gun guy either, but I do get sucked into this database now that you've tricked me into seeing it 3 weeks in a row.
That's right. My plan has worked.
You want to talk numbers?
This film did really well. It, they consecutively they have kept doing better and better, and so it worked well for Leone as he continued making films, even though his output was relatively small over the course of his career. But this film ended up. What did it cost? It was I saw it was like 1.2, 1.3 million, somewhere in that range, and it ended up. It was a long film. Like we said, it was nearly 3 hours. So in the context of our profit per finished minute, that obviously affected it a little bit. But just domestically, at least what I've found. Now, this is a lifetime gross here in the U.S. It's grossed $25 million in the U.S. And so, that's pretty good numbers for the number. I mean, it had a number of different releases and everything. Again, I couldn't find anything about the Italian numbers. But, obviously we know that this film didn't do as well as For a Few Dollars More, because like I said last week, For a Few Dollars More became the number one film, highest grossing film in Italy until 1971. So this film didn't even knock that one off of its post there. But this film did well for itself, and it ended up making about 900 adjusted profit per finished minute, about $932,000 per finished minute.
So not slouchy.
Not too bad. Too bad. I think they can pat themselves on the back for it.
But it does make me feel just a little bit better that it didn't outdo the one that I like more.
Not quite.
Just saying.
That's right.
All right. Let's rank it.
Alrighty.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel, and you will be able to see all of our favorite films and those that are not our favorites. Stack them up. Let's see if this one is going to break the top 42.
Top 42. Let's see if it does. All right, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or The Bourne Supremacy?
What an interesting thing that we seem to do every week.
Yes, indeed. I would do The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I would do The Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
All right. How about, now this is an interesting one. I'm not sure how we're going to do this. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or For a Few Dollars More?
For a few dollars more.
And see, I would say The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Oh, man. Well, this is when we got a rock, paper, scissors.
We're going to have to.
Yeah.
Because, Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay.
One, two, three.
Scissors.
Dang. Yes. All right. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or No Country for Old Men?
I'm going to say Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for me.
Yeah, I think I will too. Although, God, it's No Country for Old Men. But I'm going to say The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'll give it that. Oh, well, man. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Brazil?
Oh, awesome. I'm just going to sit back and watch the fireworks.
Well, I'm going to say Brazil. There's no fireworks on my end.
I actually will also say Brazil, so...
So there, all right. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Aliens?
Aliens.
Wow. All right, I'll go with Aliens. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or The Fisher King? Oh, Robin.
Are you going for the vote of sadness? Is that
it made me think of Robin. I'm going to go Fisher King, though. Not because of sadness. I just think I'm going to go that route.
Yeah, okay.
But I could go either way, really.
No. I'm going to go with the Fisher King, and I'm going to mean it.
Oh, okay. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or The French Connection?
The French Connection.
I think I would do The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Really?
Yeah.
Like how much?
I think I would. I mean, I'd put it on first.
Really?
Yeah.
What about picking your toes in Poughkeepsie?
Yeah, I know.
Your feet?
I can be on the fence with this one.
I'm not really. I do love French Connection. I mean, by comparison.
All right, I'll give you French Connection
All
then.
right.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Fight Club?
Fight Club.
Oh, wow.
Hands down. I deeply love Fight Club.
All right. I'll give it to you. All right, look at that. Number 19.
Oh.
Out of 147.
Check it out. It made it into the top 42. Excellent. I like that. I feel good about that.
Yeah, I do too. I was hoping I was rooting for the top 10, but hey, top 20, I'll live with that.
It was all fraudulent anyway because I lost that first toss.
That's right.
So I think we've already mentioned it where we're going from here next week, right?
Yeah, for those of you who don't live in the United States, the first Monday of September is Labor Day here. And so we thought we would time Jason Reitman's Labor Day film to match with our Labor Day holiday. And so next week we will be talking about Labor Day.
Do you listen to the Flophouse podcast?
I don't.
Okay. It's pretty much like our show, except for it's only movies they hate that are really bad. And when we first started talking about our Labor Day kind of holiday extravaganza, it was just 2 weeks ago that the Flophouse did Labor Day.
Oh, that's funny.
And I just have to read. This is just to get ready. I'm just going to read what they wrote on their site about Labor Day. No movie has sexualized pastry so much since American Pie, yet somehow Labor Day is even less erotic than Jason Biggs' blank deep in apple filling.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. So we have that to live up to. And I think that was some of our comments of our own film board.
Oh,
Et tu, Brute? When we get comments like, so why'd you put Labor Day on the list?
Oh, man. I haven't seen it yet. So
Me neither. It's a gamble.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it. I have actually heard mixed things. I talked to some people who flat out love it, and they think that it was just a brilliant piece of filmmaking. And then I would say that those are in the minority. I think most people I've talked to don't seem to have liked it. So I'm curious where we both end up landing.
Did they compare it at all to Knowing?
You. Funny guy.
That's all I got, Andy. That's just all I got. I got to go to bed.
Oh, you lazy bum. I'm going to go watch it again. 3 more hours.
I'm doing a 1 star. I could pick any one of these 1 stars. Are there different versions of this movie? By Barb Ray. What the heck was this mess? A 3-hour movie with no plot until over halfway through, voiceovers like a Godzilla movie, and lame dialogue. This must have been awesome for Clint Eastwood because he had about 10 minutes of dialogue in the whole movie. My wife and I watched the whole movie just to see if the ending made it. But nope, we couldn't figure out why this movie was so popular. The only thing I can come up with is the music. There's just nothing here. And it's so long and so boring. Ugh. Next time I'll watch Static for more entertainment. And scene.
Wow.
Yeah. Harsh.
Voiceover.
Static. Well, dubbing.
It's the dubbing. Yeah,
It's
okay.
the dubbing.
Yeah, right.
Some people, Andy, they're just not as civilized.
They're not. They really aren't.
What's yours?
Mine is by Mr. Contrarian, who says, overrated, 2 stars. The Good. Stunning Blu-ray transfer. Perfect casting and production design. The Bad. The nature of greed, violence, and especially war are not fully explored. The Ugly. Too many similar smug macho confrontations, close-ups, and schemes. I finally realized Eastwood is never, quote, acting as much as, quote, posturing while grunting out lines, and Tarantino is a shameless vulture.
Well, that's a different conversation.
Yes, but it's randomly thrown in there at the end.
I know. And some sinks are made of metal. What?
Andy, it is hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
I love The Next Reel Season 4. Do you know why?
I don't. Why?
Because we got to talk about my favorite movie, Terry Gilliam's Brazil.
That's not even an adaptation.
No, but it was such a great part of our great Terry Gilliam series, and a few others in that series were adaptations, like The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, adapted from Raspi's stories, and La Jetée, which inspired 12 Monkeys.
Oh, right. And for our Man with No Name trilogy, we saw how Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars was basically stolen from Kurosawa's Yojimbo.
We added Labor Day to our Jason Reitman series, adapted from Joyce Maynard's novel.
Oof, there's one we'll always regret.
Our big Stephen King series covered adaptations like The Shining, Cujo, Christine, and Stand By Me, great horror and coming-of-age tales.
Another Coen Brothers adaptation, too. We got to talk about how they turned Homer's The Odyssey into Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou?
For our holiday series, we did The Bishop's Wife and The Poseidon Adventure.
And who could forget seeing Alec Guinness in the adaptation of Kind Hearts and Coronets during our series dedicated to him.
We really need to do more of his films.
Truly.
We had our first film noir series with classics like Double Indemnity, Detour, and Out of the Past.
And our black and white cinematography of James Wong Howe series with The Thin Man, Sweet Smell of Success, Seconds, and King's Row. So many adaptations.
Oh, you're not kidding. Dive deeper into these originals and more at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book you buy helps support our show.
Get the full list at thenextreel.com/originals and start reading today.